the most dangerous man behind bars. He was locked in one of the most secure prisons in the United States, but he had other plans. He didn't want to run. He wanted to vanish. It was just another day in the most secure prison in America. Steel doors slammed shut. Cameras scanned every inch. Guards followed routines with military precision. And deep within a concrete cell, a man sat in silence, planning the impossible. His name was Elias Krueger, a name that sent chills through FBI offices, law enforcement circles, and criminal networks alike. Elias wasn't your average inmate. He wasn't a drug dealer. He wasn't a gangbanger. He wasn't even just a killer. He was something much more terrifying. A calculated, cold, and brilliant mind, trained for war, honed for manipulation, and destined for destruction. He was convicted of 14 brutal murders, including the assassination of a federal judge, a state senator, and 3 undercover agents. The media dubbed him the Ghost Killer, because by the time authorities found the bodies, Elias was already gone. At trial, he showed no emotion, no regret, no reaction. The judge handed down the sentence, 8 consecutive life sentences without parole, and one more punishment, Supermax isolation at USP Florence ADX, also known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, a fortress carved into Colorado's mountains, home to the most dangerous men on Earth. Here, inmates don't just lose freedom, they lose time, sound, light, and eventually, their minds. Krueger was locked in a concrete cell, 7 by 12 feet. He had no windows, just a small vertical slit high on the wall, barely letting in a thread of sunlight. His meals arrived through a slot in the door. He was allowed out for 1 hour a day, alone, in a caged concrete yard. The entire facility was monitored by 1,400 surveillance cameras. Motion sensors tracked every move. Guards patrolled like clockwork. Escaping was not just impossible, it was unthinkable. But Elias Krueger, he thought differently. The guards nicknamed him the Ghost. He never spoke, never smiled, never screamed. But he watched. Every single day, for hours, Elias studied the prison, not with his hands, with his eyes. He counted the steps of the guards, timed the rotations of the cameras, noted which doors clicked half a second later than the others, which officers were distracted, which ones could be bribed or broken. In silence, he built a blueprint. While other inmates ranted, fought, or broke down, Elias was building something in his head. A model, a plan, a way out. He knew that brute force wouldn't work. No tunnel digging, no riots, no hostages. He didn't want to flee. He wanted to disappear, like smoke. The prison believed they had broken him. What they didn't know was that he was just getting started. He had 6 months. 6 months to outthink a billion-dollar security system. 6 months to break the minds of those guarding him. 6 months to find the one crack in an unbreakable wall. And then vanish. Coming up next, how did Elias Krueger begin crafting the perfect escape? What made him choose a 6-month deadline? And what was the first move in a game that no one even knew was being played? Because when the most dangerous man in America stops speaking, you better believe he's planning something. A mind trained for escape. Elias Krueger didn't wake up one day and suddenly decide to escape. His decision wasn't born from emotion, panic, or desperation. It was a tactical response, triggered by a message. One morning during his routine meal delivery, Elias received a folded napkin tucked under his tray. A message, 7 words, scribbled in pencil. Transfer scheduled, 6 months, kill order issued. No signature, no sender. But Krueger understood. Somebody, possibly the same people who once used him or wanted him dead, had infiltrated the system. He was being moved, and once out of ADX Florence, he'd be vulnerable. No more 10-inch steel doors, no more solitary protection, no more cold concrete barriers. He wasn't just going to be transferred, he was going to be silenced. That's when the countdown began. For the next 6 months, Elias Krueger turned his mind into a weapon. Again. Before his arrest, Elias had served as a covert operative, a government asset, a ghost who crossed borders, destabilized regimes, and disappeared without a trace. He wasn't just a killer. He was trained in psychological warfare, surveillance evasion, and infiltration. The same government that now locked him away had once handed him passports, identities, and kill orders. He knew how systems worked, and how they failed. And now he'd use everything they'd taught him against them. Step 1. Observation. Krueger began mapping the prison with military precision, using only his eyes, ears, and memory. He memorized the guards' schedules down to the second. He knew which officers leaned on the left foot while standing, which ones carried extra keys on their belts, and which ones were overworked and underpaid. He tracked the cameras, their range, and blind spots, noting when one flickered for half a second or rebooted during system resets. He began testing the system. During his hour of recreation, he would intentionally drop his water bottle in different spots, testing reaction times. Once, he coughed violently until a guard came running, noting exactly how long it took for medical staff to arrive. Everything was a calculation. Step 2. Deception. Krueger started acting differently. He became quiet, more than usual. Slower, weaker. He dragged his feet, started missing meals, mumbled to himself. Guards reported his decline to medical. Psychologists noted signs of early-stage psychosis. They reduced surveillance, labeled him as mentally deteriorating. But it was a show. Every tick, every mutter, every shake of the hand, rehearsed. It worked. Krueger was moved to a medical observation cell, different layout, different access, new opportunity. Step 3. Recruitment. He didn't trust anyone, but he knew how to use people. There was one guard, Officer Brent Halverson, 38, divorced, in debt, working double shifts. Krueger noticed the signs, the constant sighing, checking his phone during rounds, sneaking coffee into isolation zones. Over weeks, Krueger planted the idea. Do you think they'd care if you disappeared? I wonder how much my head is worth outside these walls. You could help me, and never work again. At first, Halverson laughed it off, but curiosity is a dangerous seed, and Krueger, he was a master gardener. Within a month, Halverson was doing favors, bringing extra napkins, leaving his clipboard behind, by accident, letting Krueger stay an extra minute in the hallway. It wasn't bribery, it was manipulation. Krueger never asked directly. He allowed Halverson to offer, and Halverson, like every weak link, eventually broke. He brought Krueger a tool hidden in a Bible, a pen that wasn't really a pen, a device with the power to jam a door lock for exactly 11 seconds. Just enough. But Krueger knew better than to rush. This wasn't going to be some wild escape. No drama, no alarms, no bloodshed. It was going to be surgical. 6 months, no room for emotion, no second chances. One mistake, and he'd vanish for a different reason, buried in a hole, silenced forever. Elias Krueger had the one thing most inmates didn't: patience. He didn't rush. He didn't act out. He waited, like a predator in a cage, watching the system breathe, waiting for it to blink. And it did. One night, during a routine lockdown test, the prison's electronic doors glitched for exactly 2.4 seconds. It was brief, barely noticeable. But to Krueger, it was a confirmation. Even this fortress had cracks. Over the next few weeks, he constructed what could only be called a perfect chain reaction, a multi-stage escape sequence with no alarms, no blood, no evidence. Every step relied on the next. If even one thing failed, the entire plan would collapse. But Krueger didn't plan for failure. Stage 1. The paper wall. Krueger's first move wasn't physical. It was psychological. He began folding napkins from his meals into identical squares, hundreds of them. Each one pressed flat, marked with tiny dots using toothpaste mixed with ink from a pen he smuggled in pieces. These weren't just napkins. They were maps. Each dot represented something: a camera's turning radius, a guard's step pattern, a second-by-second breakdown of the prison's rotation system. He pasted these napkins behind his wall mirror, a space no bigger than a book cover, invisible to any routine check. Stage 2, the duplicate key. Next came the most dangerous part: access. Thanks to Officer Halverson, Krueger had stolen 12 seconds of access to a utility hallway. In those 12 seconds, he took a mold of a secondary janitor key, used to access air duct panels for emergency repairs. Using melted plastic from a smuggled food tray, salt, and foil, Krueger constructed a crude but functional replica. It wouldn't open main doors, but it would get him into places cameras couldn't see. Stage 3, the camera loop. For years, Krueger studied how the cameras worked. He noticed a recurring event. Every Wednesday, between 2 a.m. and 2 a.m. 4 minutes, one of the systems would restart during maintenance. The reboot lasted 11 seconds, and during that time, cameras froze. 11 seconds of invisibility. If he could time it exactly. With Halverson's help, he tested it. One night, he dropped a towel in the hallway, then retrieved it during the blackout window. No reaction. No guards came. It worked. Stage 4. The distraction. Krueger knew the night he'd leave couldn't be quiet. He needed chaos. He arranged it without saying a word. In a coded message sent through a series of manipulated library requests, he triggered an argument between two rival gang members on D Block. A racial insult, carefully placed in a returned book. That night, fists flew. Alarms sounded. Staff was reallocated. D Block went into emergency lockdown, just as planned. Stage 5. The exit. On the night of the escape, everything was ready. At 1:55 a.m., a staged heart attack in cell 32B triggered a code blue. Medical staff rushed in. Security focus shifted. One of the hallways was opened temporarily for EMTs. At 2:03 a.m., as the camera system hit its routine reboot window, Krueger made his move. With his fake key, he slipped into a ventilation panel. Crawled 18 feet through a maintenance tunnel no one had entered in 7 years. He emerged in the laundry disposal zone. There, tucked behind crates, was a custodian uniform provided by Halverson the night before. He changed clothes, took a mop, walked, calmly, past 2 security checkpoints. At exactly 2:17 a.m., he walked out of the side service door. No alarms, no chase, no witnesses. Gone. By 6 a.m., the prison went into full lockdown. Krueger's cell was empty. No signs of forced entry, no broken locks, no guards harmed, just nothing, like he had vanished into the night. Authorities couldn't figure out how. There were no prints, no footage, no trails. Only one thing was found in his cell, behind the wall mirror, a message written in blood-red ink. "You trained me. You forgot who I was." July 12th, 2 a.m. The prison was asleep, or so it thought. Fists flew in D Block. Guards shouted. Sirens wailed. In the chaos, one man moved with chilling calm. Elias Krueger. He wasn't running. He was flowing, like a shadow along concrete walls and flickering lights. Wearing a janitor's uniform, he carried a mop in one hand, a trash bin in the other. He moved like he belonged there. And that was the trick. Phase 1. Disappear in plain sight. Security footage showed a man in a gray uniform walking down corridor 6. Badge, captain gloves. Not a single guard gave him a second glance. He entered the laundry chute area, closed the door behind him, removed the janitor gear. Underneath, black tactical clothing, lightweight, flexible, and silent. He slipped into a crawl space, barely 20 inches high, leading into the facility's outer utilities tunnel. a forgotten part of the original structure from decades ago. Phase 2. The underground path. Using the replica key Halverson had provided weeks earlier, Krueger unlocked a disused access gate deep beneath the facility. The tunnel had rats, rusted pipes, and a stench of mildew and bleach, but it led outside the outer perimeter. It wasn't long, but it was just far enough to bypass the sensors. At the tunnel's end was an old drainage outlet. He pulled off the grate, pre-loosened by Halverson 2 weeks earlier, and crawled out into the open Colorado night. The cool air hit his face. For the first time in 7 years, Elias Krueger was no longer behind a wall. Phase 3. The silent ghost. He didn't scream, didn't celebrate. Instead, he walked into the forest behind the outer maintenance compound. There, buried beneath a specific tree, one he marked on a map long ago, was a black duffel bag, civilian clothes, a burner phone cache, $10,000 in plastic-sealed stacks, a forged ID and passport. It had been placed there months before his escape even began, by someone else, a contact he never spoke to, someone who owed him a favor. He changed clothes, tossed the prison uniform into a creek, and vanished into the tree line. Back at the prison, by the time the night shift realized Krueger was missing, it was 6:12 a.m. A guard doing routine head count paused outside cell 9. The mirror was gone. The bunk was empty. The security lock was still engaged. Panic set in. A full lockdown began within 90 seconds. Helicopters scrambled. Sirens blared across the mountains, but it was too late. He was already miles away. FBI response. National emergency. By noon, the FBI, U.S. Marshals, Homeland Security, and even Interpol were alerted. Elias Krueger's name hit every news outlet. America's most dangerous man was loose. A $5 million reward was placed on his head. Checkpoints were activated in 5 surrounding states. Drones were deployed to search the woods. But there was nothing, not a footprint, not a fingerprint, not even thermal readings. The first clue appears. 2 days later, a hotel manager in Santa Fe, New Mexico, reported something strange. Room 206 had been paid for in cash. The guest checked in using the name Joseph L. Mercer. He wore sunglasses, a baseball cap, and never asked for room service. When the manager entered the room, he found it empty, except for a mirror on the bed, and written on the glass, in red marker. They built a cage around a ghost. Now the ghost is free. The aftermath. The government denied all connections to Krueger's past, but leaked documents hinted at black ops missions, foreign assassinations, and CIA contracts under Project Echo. The message was clear. Krueger hadn't escaped for freedom. He escaped for a purpose, one that no one understood. Yet. Last sightings, unconfirmed. A man matching Krueger's description seen boarding a freighter in Galveston, Texas. A blurry image of someone resembling him walking through the crowds at Mexico City International Airport. A voice, distorted through a scrambled call, calling into a podcast claiming, "America trains its monsters, then buries them when they disobey." 3 days. That's how long it took before the world realized Elias Krueger wasn't coming back. The FBI flooded the nation with alerts. Posters with his face were plastered on buses, street corners, border crossings. His name trended worldwide. Number Krueger escape, number ghost behind bars, number America's monster gone. But for all their efforts, there was no trace. No phone calls, no camera sightings, no digital activity. It was as if he had vanished into smoke. And maybe that's exactly what he wanted. The government's response. Panic behind the curtain. In official press conferences, government spokespeople reassured the public, "This man is dangerous, but we will find him." Every agency is mobilized. This was a 1 in a million failure. But behind closed doors, documents leaked. Internal memos revealed something terrifying. Krueger hadn't just escaped. He had exploited blind spots that were never supposed to exist. His plan bypassed over $500 million in prison infrastructure, designed to be impenetrable. Former intelligence agents stepped forward, some anonymously, claiming that Krueger had once been part of Project Echo, a black ops unit trained in psychological manipulation, infiltration, and counter-surveillance. One source said, "We didn't just teach him how to kill, we taught him how to vanish." And now, that ghost had returned. Theories spread like wildfire. Reddit exploded with speculation. Podcasts launched deep dives. YouTube channels began creating timelines, theories, and analysis. Here were some of the most chilling theories. Theory 1, he's hunting those who betrayed him. Some believe Krueger wasn't escaping justice, he was starting a mission, that the message in the hotel room wasn't for the public, but for someone specific. The mirror, the red ink, the phrase, "they built a cage around a ghost," a warning. Theory 2, he's already dead, and it was planned that way. Others think the escape was a cover-up, that Krueger was taken out of the prison deliberately, either assassinated by a rival agency or eliminated to keep his secrets buried. The escape, they argue, was just a smokescreen. Theory 3, he's watching all of us. Some believe he's still in the US, living under a fake identity, maybe in a small town, maybe walking past us in the supermarket. He's not hiding from us. He's watching us. One whisper, 6 months later. Exactly 6 months after his escape, an anonymous package arrived at a local news station in DC. No fingerprints, no postmark, just a black envelope. Inside was a USB drive. It contained a single video, static for 10 seconds. Then a distorted voice, unmistakably Krueger's, speaking through a modulated filter. "You locked me up to forget what you created, but you taught me one thing. The only way out is through the system itself. This isn't revenge. This is correction." Then static again. End of video. The footage was never aired. The FBI immediately confiscated the tape, but a copy leaked online hours later and racked up 40 million views in 2 days. The legacy of Elias Krueger. Since that day, Krueger has become more than a fugitive. He's a myth, a warning, and for some, a hero. To conspiracy theorists, he's the proof of government corruption. To law enforcement, he's the ultimate black mark. To prison architects, he's the flaw in the blueprint. And to the world, he's the man who walked out of hell and never looked back. Final scene. Cut to aerial drone footage over a remote village in South America. A man in a white linen shirt walks through a marketplace. He buys fruit, tips the vendor, smiles softly, and walks away. We don't see his face, but the camera zooms in on his wrist, a tattoo, faded, deliberate. Military-style code, Echo 07. The screen fades to black. He was never just a prisoner. He was a ghost trained by ghosts. And ghosts don't die, they disappear.